Welcome back. This is still TV3 New Days. Time now for the big issue, and my guests are seated, and I hope you're looking forward to the conversation we're going to be having. We're talking about water and the crisis that we're facing with the incessant rains and spillage of the Weija Dam. But in the studios this morning, I have Daniel Nikwate Titus Glover. He's a former MP for Tema East. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Not Chakistale me. Okay. I see.
And the Daguma community in Tema also installed me chief.
Oh.
I'm a Dantaliga or Dantalisina.
What does that mean?
That is pillar.
Oh, okay.
You are the pillar.
Okay.
And Aquapimampom also chief there.
So you have three
titles, yeah.
Wow.
It's you the guys who don't recognize me. So.
Oh, we haven't said we don't recognize you. Some of us didn't know. We're now finding out.
So the non-guys are recognizing me. So I have three chieftains.
That's not fair to them.
That's not fair.
To the guys who made you their member of parliament. That's
I know, right?
Too,
no, but that must feel good. And I'm sure you're doing a lot of developmental works for these areas.
Somehow.
I see.
Somehow.
Oh, okay. Anyway, also joining us this morning is Alhaji Alasan Suini. He is the MP for Tamale North. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm terrific.
It's been a while I saw you.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I see you though.
You see me?
Yeah.
Where do you see me?
Well, on the screen.
On the screens. Oh, okay. I also see you when, the press briefings here and there.
Know.
But are you also a chief in any community?
Not really.
Not, okay.
Very
soon.
I'm a son of a chief, a late chief.
So you're a prince?
To some extent,
okay.
Yes.
How do you call a prince in...
Nabia.
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 Oh, so Nabia Alasan Suini. So you see today we're dealing with royalty.
Let me say that
on the show.
Titus looks amazing.
He does.
And
I like the look.
It suits the moment too. You know, we're about to celebrate Damba.
Okay.
And as usual, we have this tradition. It's been catching on in the last couple of years where Dagombas or people from everywhere are encouraged to take pictures of themselves in smoke and share on social media. It started trending. Every year it trends.
I need to
well.
sport one as well.
So you should sport your smoke and enjoying the Damba festival.
Exactly.
Yeah, Titus does look
So
amazing.
when the hat is tilted this way, what does it mean? You don't want
trouble. When I got to Yendi way back in 2009 to campaign with the Den Nanado, and I bought the hats right at the community center.
Okay.
And the gentleman told me, we don't wear the hat by hat. There's a meaning. When you turn this way or that way, you don't want trouble. When you turn behind you like this, it means you have followers. The hat must not stand up like this.
Why?
When you stand up like this, it means that you are powerful.
You are the chief.
So they can be
it's only the chief who can...
Yes, you can raise it like this.
Oh.
But it should be left.
But left or right,
you don't want trouble.
You don't want trouble at all. Oh, I see. Okay. At least we've learned something this morning for those of us who didn't know. But let's get into our first story for today. And thousands have been rendered homeless following the spillage of the Weija Dam. And a lot of homes have been submerged in the water, from Mahian to a foreman as well after the downpour. And yesterday, the Director of Corporate Affairs for the Ghana Water Company was speaking, and he was explaining why there was a need for the spillage. And he said that unfortunately, it's either we spill the water from the dam or the dam breaks down, and it will take us another 3 to 4 years to be able to reconstruct the dam. And that would mean no water for treatment and no water for our homes. So that is the situation at the moment. Let's take a look at the story that was put together yesterday in the morning and later in the evening to ascertain the level of water, that has seeped into homes and what people are doing about it. Take a look.
Days of torrential rainfall upstream have left low-lying areas such as Weija, New Weija and Tetegu flooded. This was after the Ghana Water Company, managers of the Weija Dam, spilled excess water from the dam to prevent it from collapse. The resultant effect of the spillage has been devastating, as more than 500 inhabitants currently remain displaced. The water level has increased, and residents say the flood situation is the worst in more than a decade. Residents say further spillage could force more people to evacuate. Many children could not go to school as residents continue to abandon their homes to safety.
When it was opened yesterday, it was a bit down, so we thought that would be how it should be. But then this morning at dawn, they opened everything. I think it's 5 turbines, and then I think the turbines are all opened. And now it's coming with the sort of speed that in fact we cannot manage. Yeah, we can't manage it. And then a lot of properties are all gone. You know, in fact, we are just praying that lives will be saved.
I'm actually going to a French place tonight. I went for class around, I went in the morning and then coming back in the evening to meet that the water has come this far. Initially when I was leaving, it hasn't come this far. So when I came and I met it, I have to leave because tomorrow to have class. I've lived here for very long, more than 20 years. But initially when houses were not around, the water used to come like this. But when they started building houses, it wasn't coming like this. And so I'm quite surprised it has come this far. I have to wait for the water to dry up before I come back. I have my parents, I have my siblings there. I don't know how safe they are. In fact, I don't know how safe they are, but I have to go. I'm not running because I'm afraid, but I'm running because I have to do rounds.
I've flown my house, but I haven't completed. So I'm going to be on the top.
And you think that place you'll be safe?
Oh, it is safe. My wife and my children are over there. Because if you enter into my hall, you will get the level by your knees.
So you've been able to carry your bed, your mattresses to the top?
Yeah, we carry the mattresses and spoilable things on to the top. But the wardrobes and chairs is in the room.
Will you consider relocating?
I don't. Because there's nowhere in Accra which is not flooding. Even at Circle, and we have seen a lot, people die over there. But here we haven't, I don't think we have recorded so far because I haven't heard some. Being a Muslim, I believe that when the life ends, it ends. On your creating day, God will write everything, how you are going to die, where you are going to die, and everything. So if the time ends, nobody can change it.
As the level of water is increasing, right now we are all stranded. We don't know where we are moving. So we manage hanging around.
So currently, NADBO has not prepared a place for you guys to move to?
No, I'm not sure. They came into here, but we are not seeing anything. We are still looking up to them.
All right, and so that is the situation at hand at the moment. And like I mentioned earlier, yesterday, Stanley Mate, he's the Director of Corporate Affairs with the Ghana Water Company, explained that this is just the tip of the iceberg, because if they had allowed the water to stay in the dam, which can only take a level of about 48 feet, if it goes beyond that, then we're going to face a major crisis where 60% of Accra is going to be flooded, and we cannot afford that kind of disaster. And so it's either they spill or the dam collapses, and that is the situation at the moment. Titus.
My name is Titus Glover.
Titus Glover. What do you say about this? I mean, it's very heartbreaking.
It is really indeed heartbreaking. First of all, let's say good morning to your viewers, to my brother Suhini and yourself. Two factors have caused this problem. One is about indiscipline on the part of the people. Because when you get up and you want to go and buy land, people buy land anyhow, from individuals, from chiefs, without taking the opportunity to find out whether indeed these places where I'm going to buy the land is earmarked for a purpose. I'm sure when this dam was built, some study was done where people were prevented coming closer to the dam. Once in a while, you hear Ghana Water Company say that, look, people are building into where they are not supposed to build.
Yeah.
So if you are going to buy a land and you just get up because you want to get a land and just go and buy, first of all, you need to look at the scheme in the areas where these lands are being sold. You need to call on the town council planning, go to the local assembly, and find out whether indeed this space or this land I've got and I want to buy, if there are any challenges that in future can affect me, please advise me. There are most of our people, they don't do that. They just go and buy, and at the end of the day, these are some of the issues that they go through. Then the inaction of some of these local assemblies. I've been an assembly member before, in 1998 to 2002, in Tema. I worked with Honorable Nia Mashde. I keep saying this thing and I will repeat it. He was the most successful MC Tema has ever had in our time.
Why do you say that?
At that time, Municipal Assembly was under Tema. Ashaiman, Municipal Assembly was under Tema. Bonkatamanso, and until recently, our baby, Tema West Municipal Assembly. His eyes and ears were all over the places. And he charged assembly members. Amashte doesn't sleep. So when you have a unit committee, an assembly, and you see pockets of buildings springing up, some building on waterways, some building on places earmarked for development in the communities, and you keep quiet, you don't talk about it. And at the end of the day, the problems start hitting you on the face. Whom do you blame? So our assemblies must be up and doing. Sometimes they go and write on the wall, stop work. They don't even they don't follow up.
The question is, why should they even wait for you to start building before?
So when you go and write stop work, produce permit, who does the follow-up? And they build in the night. By the time you finish, they are done. And when you're about to move in to break it down, it becomes an issue. So clearly, I want to urge and encourage the assemblies that there's this high time they look at these things well and make sure they go to the ground. The unit committee members, because the chief executive is not everywhere, that is why they have decentralized the local government structure. The unit committee members are on the ground, followed by the assembly members, together with the chiefs and people within these communities. So we're able to bring the attention of the administration of the assembly to whatever is going on and make sure we correct some of these things. And you heard what Mr. Marty said.
Yeah.
If it doesn't spill, it's going to cost all of us. And that is why the spillage has come, so that they clear the excess water in their storage, what they call it, tanks, and get it off, so that be able to safeguard the dam for us.
But there's a canal that links to the sea. Is it time maybe they expand it so that the water would spill into the sea so it doesn't come into? It is because people have encroached. They need to desilt. I agree with you that they need to expand it. Because the estuary where it enters the sea, if it is more narrow, it's narrow, and it's sometimes choked, you need to desilt it. You need to expand it. So the volume of water that is taken out can also increase and get this water out. But we need to do sensitization. We need to do more advocacy, more education, and let our people know. You don't just get up and go and buy land. You have to be very mindful. If you don't do that, these are some of the consequences that you're going to face at the end of the day. It's most unfortunate. It is.
It is most unfortunate. The young man growing up, you get some small money, you want to start life, get a land, start building. And because you did not do thorough check in the area where you went and bought the land, this is the price that you pay for it. It's almost unfortunate, but yes.
Very. But let me also introduce our third guest this morning, Dr. Ronald Abrahams. He's the Director for Water Resources Commission in the Eastern Region. Good to have you join us this morning, and I hope you're well.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, the Eastern Region is also facing its own challenges, with flooding. Yesterday, there was a story about Koforidua and how, some parts of Koforidua has also flooded. And so it's a very disturbing problem. But let's deal with Weija and the water crisis, of course. Then maybe we'll move into the other areas as well. Could we have found another way instead of having to spill the water like we always do every year?
Well, we have no choice, because these waters are coming from the eastern and central regions. And we cannot actually hold it, because the dam was built specifically to allow water to some level. And when the levels are going beyond, it means we are risking the breach of the dam, which can be very disastrous. It will interest you to know that the whole of Dansoman could be washed into the Gulf of Guinea if we allow that volume of water that has been impounded there to go. It's
the whole
delta.
of Dansoman?
Yes. And those buildings which are just after the dam, you know, the downstream of the dam, they will all suffer. Yesterday, I got calls from them, and I indicated that, yes, 4 of the sluice gates will have to be opened to allow the water to go. Otherwise, we'll have a problem on our hand, and that will be more serious. In our scheme of things, within the Water Resources Commission, we have indicated that the Weija Dam is a Class 4 dam.
Okay.
We classify the dams according to their impact when it breaches. That is the same, it's just about saying that when it collapses. Once it's a Class 4 dam, the consequences of we losing the dam will be there, because it will really have a major impact on our systems here. So we have no choice than to release, because the dam, as you see it, receives water from the J River and then the main Dinsu stream, which flows from somewhere around Potrasi, the Etua forest area.
Okay.
And meanders its way through to Accra. And as it comes, a lot of streams and rivers join it. So it's massive. It's massive.
Yesterday, Engineer Abdullah Mahama, he's a civil engineer, he was talking about the fact that the Galamsey activities in the Chebi area, because we're talking about the water flowing from the eastern and central region. So yes, that is what is leading to excess water flowing and carrying along the silt into the major cities, and which is why we're experiencing what we're experiencing, flooding all over. I mean, do you agree with that?
No, I disagree with him, because Galamsey, it's on its own there, and primarily it is not about the Dinsu at all. Within the Dinsu Basin, we have up to 5 treatment facilities from Apeja all the way down to Weija, and all of them are treating water. So the Dinsu is not affected by Galamsey activities. Yes.
Okay.
We have had the cause to chase people who were attempting to do, and we have fought these battles over 20 years now. And nobody has been able to succeed with mining within the Dinsu Basin. Within the Birim Basin, which actually meanders its way and then gets to the western region, is part of the main PRA system. And that is where the issues are. Recently, we have had a cause to really prioritize it also, because of the issues that are associated with it. And our current situation could be blamed on what we are trying to do as far as small-scale mining and then the community mining is concerned. You know, they all end up, even the large-scale mining ends up in, some breaches here and there, which are not supposed to be countenanced. And I think we have to begin to think about decisions that we have to take to really forestall some of these things, even if we have to do away with community mining and then the small-scale mining.
But how much pressure are you putting on, for example, the assemblies within these municipalities? Because we were also told that, the Weija Lake could be extinct. As at last year, that's what we're told, that it could be extinct because of the activities of humans around the lake. And so building and waterways, pollution and all of that. And so we're at a crisis level. What kind of pressure has been given to these assemblies to ensure that, just like Titus Glover said, we prevent people from building on these waterways?
Well, I think this dam existed since 1928. And the Water Resources Commission was established by law in 1996. So by 1998, we have started full operation. We inherited some of the problems. And it is still attitudinal, because communities have been resettled from the compulsorily acquired land, just what constitutes the immediate environs of the lake, which we call the acquisition. A law was passed, an executive instrument 130 of 1977 was passed to really deal with this kind of system where nobody is supposed to enter that zone and do anything. But what we found was that the places have been encroached, 20 years or so badly, and we have made several attempts to get rid of the structures. It hasn't worked because along the line there are, interferences
from whom?
From the powers that be. And you go midstream, and if I should actually bring the history to the fore, we have made more than 3 attempts to get these things out, and it hasn't worked because...
To do what exactly? To pull down these buildings and
some
prevent?
Some journalists, some politicians, some human rights activists will come our way and will not want us to continue. So deliberately, people have actually prevented real action which will bring the discipline that we all need. And I think it's about time we take the bull by the horn. We are trying to be innovative now. We are saying to ourselves, why won't we turn these catchments into a kind of ecotourism, which is already happening naturally, into an ecotourism site where we use a little bit of the periphery of the acquisition to ensure that beyond where we have used, nobody actually goes there to do anything. And that is also being confronted from even public institutions.
There are hundreds of homes and thousands of people living in those areas. I don't know if at this point where we've allowed them to build, and I'll bring Alaji in at this point, we've allowed them to build, we've watched on for them to encroach these areas. Do you think that it's even possible for us to go back to even trying to turn that place into an ecotourism center?
Well, Bella, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I agree to a very large extent with Titus Glover when he talks about the role of the assemblies. But I think the problem at hand is much bigger than assemblies can handle. I think what we require, which we have always lacked, by the way, for a very long time now, is proper central planning. I mean, as a country, we do not pay attention to planning. Planning, and that's why they say if you do not plan, then you are planning to fail. I mean, on any project, you need to have that approach. Because why? Bella, as we have this discussion, mark it down, 3, 4, 5 months down the lane, we're going to come back and sit here and talk about the integrity of the Weija Dam because of the quality and quantity of water that is going into the dam. The quantity reduced, the quality worse. Why? Because we would have been in the dry season. So what runs through my mind is what we do with boom periods, if you want to describe it as such, when we have so much water. What do we do with it? We spill it. It creates havoc because we have not planned the spillage. I have been covering, homes submerged in water in the Dansoman area since I was a journalist with Radio Gold. I mean, there were days you go to work, there's no rain. I mean, rains don't come for like 3 or 4 days, but you are in the studio and people in Dansoman come in with their, things wet. And then they invite you to come see how their homes are, submerged in water. And they don't, sometimes they used to make the noise about the fact that they were not usually informed. I have since encouraged the Ghana Water Company, and Stanley Mate does very well at that, to, publicize the news of the spillage. But then, even when they do, they usually do not know to what extent the water will reach. So sometimes the information, when it comes, people will assume that, next year, it didn't get to me, so they may not be talking to me. And yet, when they spill, you'll be sleeping at night, and then you have water, coming into your room. But I'm saying that as a country, over the years, because this has been going on for more than a decade, for decades, what have we been doing? Have we been doing the same thing? And what has been the, impact of doing the same thing? when the rains are heavy, the dam's integrity is about to be compromised, we spill. Homes are flooded, journalists go and cover it, people dry their things, and then we wait for another season.
Yeah.
I mean, do we learn anything from these things? That's why I'm saying it will require central planning to sit down and say, never again. This is not going to happen next year. And so the excess water, this is how we are going to treat it. So that when we have water shortage during the dry season, then we can utilize, this excess that we usually just spill to cause inconvenience. It will take appropriate planning. I know it will include budgeting, and it will include raising funds to carry out projects. Yes, to carry out projects that will make life more meaningful than the usual wait, dam is about to be compromised, spill, people are inconvenienced, wait for another season. I think that it doesn't speak well of us as a people, especially people in leadership places. And it's not just political leaders, everybody in leadership positions. I mean, the engineers, the planners, the technocrats, the politicians, the journalists.
Yeah.
It doesn't speak well of all of us as a people. And it's not just limited to the Weija Dam. We have a similar problem up north.
Yeah.
Only a couple of weeks ago, the Ghana Water Company had to cause announcements to be made to the effect that people should store water because their Nawuni Dam was also, their Nawuni plant was also about to be compromised. And they indicated that if the Bagri Dam spillage happened, they were going to have to shut down water production because if they didn't, it was going to compromise the integrity of their plant.
Yeah.
And I asked myself the same questions. The Bagri Dam spillage happens every year. We haven't been able to find, a solution to that spillage. It comes sometimes, it claims lives, it destroys properties, and then within a very short time, animals are dying because of lack of water.
Yeah.
Plants are dying because of lack of water. Indeed, homes do not even have water flowing through their taps because we don't have enough water to treat. And you ask yourself, why do we go through these cycles without putting in place, appropriate plans to ensure that when we have excess water, we store it for a period when we do not have, enough water.
Yeah.
And you can't just understand why we think that it is okay. We started with this Paulugu irrigation and hydro project, which was supposed to cost about $1 billion. But then again, because there was no planning attached to it, it was all political, done on a political platform and rhetoric. We went to, do the fanfare of cat and sword. That was before the 2020 elections, and up till today, nothing is happening, at the place. And so you just can't understand what we want to achieve when we seek leadership positions sometimes. Because for me, after all the leaders we have had, and with all the problems that exist in relation to this excess water and shortage of water and causing inconvenience, there should be something that we should have to show that this is how we are addressing that problem.
During a time when, of course, the NDC was in power, was there any attempt to address these challenges?
I wouldn't know so much about the Weija Dam. I you see, and that is why I would not want us to compartmentalize it into NDC, MPP, CPP.
I understand, but because you're talking about the fact that leaders come in.
So he's telling me that, but what I do know is about the Bagri Dam.
Okay.
And with the Bagri Dam, I know that the NDC under the SADA, project had developed a very comprehensive, working document that they had started engagement with the World Bank. To facilitate the proper construction of the Paulugu Dam, which was supposed to serve, the energy needs of the area. It was also even to incorporate solar, energy production and even take care of irrigation in the area. And so it was supposed to harvest this excess water use that excess water to produce energy and also to produce, crops and rice. In fact, it was one of the motivations to even upgrade the Tamale airport, because it was anticipated that the irrigation was going to lead to a boom in production of vegetables.
Yeah.
And so the airport was supposed to be, a crops and vegetables exportation center sort of. So if you look at the plan of the airport, if you check the Lands Commission plan of the airport, you realize that they made provision for a number of warehouses that were meant to store these, vegetables that will be produced from the irrigation project. So I know there was that thinking to deal with the problem. But as for
we
the
weren't
Weija,
able to achieve it because we still spill.
Yes. Because up till today we still spill, and it just tells you that we must all not be proud about it. I'm saying that we must begin to think of how to deal with the problem beyond just spilling every year, causing inconvenience to homes, and then waiting 3 months down the line to complain again about the fact that we do not have enough water to treat.
Justice Glover, I mean, what is government doing currently to address this beyond ensuring that the assemblies do their work, and of course, the people who buy these lands in these water areas as well do their due diligence? What are we doing to at least store the water, like Alhaji is saying? Because this could go a long way to help us during the dry season.
I will first respond to Alhaji's political statement that the Oblogo was purely for political fanfare, and that is almost unfortunate from him. And I know on the fact that the government meant well on Oblogo. A lot of community engagement has been done. It was designed to make sure these excess water meant for irrigational purposes and all that. So the major reason for a hold-up, I suspect, could be about funding, which I'm sure government is working around the clock to see what it can do to make sure that we'll put Oblogo into good use. Because when we're able to hold on these water, just like Weija, because all those lands around those areas were agric lands. Were agric lands that Dr. Nkrumah planned for these purposes. But because human behavior and because local assemblies have been found wanting, people go in and they are not able to enforce these bylaws, and all these things eventually come to slap us on our face.
The Oblogo Dam, I mean, since you're addressing that, the consultants, one of the consultants who was working on it says it wasn't even featured in the budgets this year, and so he doesn't even see an end in sight in terms of completing this dam, and so people should lower their expectations.
It is because funding was not available. If funding is available, I'm sure it will have been captured in the budget. Let's hope and see what happens in the 2023 budget, because we all know the situation in which we find ourselves in. So clearly, government appreciates the concern and the challenge and difficulties people up north within that catchment area of Oblogo what they go through. Because you can't build such a dam without getting a reliable funding to do it. So clearly,
we didn't have a plan from the beginning?
Why not? They have a plan.
So
they have a good plan.
What was the challenge?
So clearly sitting here, it will be very difficult on my part to know the detail as to what really went into it. But I can assure you that something definitely will need to be done to make sure we put some respite on the face of our people. But as to what the question you asked me, what are we going to do in terms of these excess waters in the interim? You see, some of these problems are our own doing. The drainage system that we have, I remember in 2013, 2014, if you know Tema very well, from the main harbour roundabout, heading towards the post office, there's a big drain over there. And they need to do reconstruction of this drain. Instead of them to expand the drain, because houses just behind this drain always complain that when it rains, it overflows into their houses. They just want to make it small. So it wasn't the lives of residents of Site 17 around that stretch. So when we are putting or we are constructing drains, let's construct drains that are big enough that can absorb more water that can take them to wherever he wants to go. But when you go and construct drains and you make it very small, what are we doing? Choke drains itself. Human character, human behavior. You live with people across your environment, your area. He looks here, he looks here. When it's rain, that is where they dump their refuse into the drain. He forgets that the drain that he has thrown into the drain is going to choke somebody's house. And he's going to cause some of these flooding that we see all over the places. So clearly we need to look at it again. Then you ask me, is it possible that the estuary where this water enters the sea, in Dansomo or Glife or Begbeise or whatever, can be expanded? And I think that need to be looked at it. The hydrological engineers, the Ghana Water, Ministry of Works and Housing. I know this gentleman, he's on pension, Mr. Metepe. He's a colleague. Very sharp man. Hydrological, yeah. Let's look at all these people. So we need to talk about these technocrats. Let's see how we can sit at table and look at how we can make a design so we can expand the estuary, the waterway that leads into the sea. Something needs to be looked at. And talking about this matter, anytime it rains between Weija to the towboat, you can't go and come. There's no thoroughfare. The whole place is blocked. People cannot go. People cannot come.
The water spills onto the road.
When it rains, yes. There's no, people just cannot drive through. From Weija all the way to the barrier at the towboat. It also needs to be looked at. The whole design of that area need to be looked at.
Can we afford to move people out of that area at this point when they've already established their homes?
Well, if the technocrats and the engineers can sit at it and some compensation need to be done, why not? Because we need to save lives. It's because of our attitudes and our indiscipline that has led us into the situation we find ourselves in. So if the engineers can really make an input, suggest to government that, look, these are ABCD reasons that we think we can do to make sure that we avert some of these things. But for now, in the interim, it is very difficult, like Sweeney is saying. In the next couple of months, we'll go back into the rainy season. And these days, you realize that in the main months of raining, we don't get the rains. May, June, July, it's not raining. September, October, then you see downpour, heavy downpour of these rains. It means that the environment itself is being threatened because of human behavior, the way we do our things around the place. So clearly, there's something needed to be done. Some conference need to be held to look at the design as to what we need to do.
Don't we do too much talking and very little action? I mean, how are we storing the water? That's one of the other ways by which we can sort of avoid...
Even the dam itself cannot store the water. It has a threshold. The dam, the way it was designed, has a threshold. It can't store it. So where are you going to store it? Which area? The whole place has been encroached. And it needs funding to go and do these kind of things, because the dam was created and there was a land that was reserved for farming purposes. Today, as you move there, all these lands are gone. They've built on these places. And these are the same houses that have been submerged in the water. So it is a double a deep blue sea. Where do you find ourselves? So clearly, as a government, what we need to do is not about talking, it's about solution to the problem. So we need to get our technocrats, the engineers on the ground, to let us know what we could do. At least if the spill even comes, how we can shepherd it gradually into the sea. So we'll be able to avoid the submersion of people's homes, destruction of lives. Listen to the man on your screen. He says he's going to live on top of his building. It's most unfortunate. But let us also know and learn that when in future you are going to buy a land, you need to research, you need to find out. Look at the scheme of these areas. The first point of call is a town and council planning office in the local assembly. What are the schemes of these places? If you're able to know, there was a time when I was working in Aluex. Somebody wanted to help me buy a land. He took me to Ashaima. Behind the place he wanted to give me the land, you have these tall leaves. And I said, this area in future, if I'm not careful, I'll run into it. I said, it's okay, I don't need it. I don't need it at all. So clearly, we also need to inform ourselves and know the right thing to do.
Are people given much of a choice? I mean, we could take advantage of housing projects, but how many of these projects are even affordable and available? And so you leave us no choice than to go and look for our own lands. And the way lands are scarce at this point, if I'm finding one in an area, you're telling me that it's a mushy area, I need a place to lay my head.
So if you take your time to look for a better place that can save you in future than to rush to go and get a land. Then you have this problem.
How would you know?
That is why you must find out. Fine, he wants to offer you a land. Thank you. Give me the documents and let me see. Let me go to the local assembly, at least to find out whether the area is a very suitable place to build. That alone, that will not cost
And it's
too
going
much.
to be very easy to just walk into a local assembly.
Why not? They should have a scheme. The chiefs who are selling these lands, they have schemes. They've zoned the places. At least they should have some information for you that could aid you to buy the land. Especially those bad chiefs, excuse my language, not all of them. If they want to urge you, buy, you should suspect there's something ahead of you. You need to take your time, research, go to the assembly, and even go behind the chief and find out if this area, of course, if you are not a technical person, and they send you to an area when you want to say, look around, you should be able to have a feel and look around and say, this area should tell me something. There's no need to rush. If you want something better for yourself in future, why do you rush?
But why would I want to go and get a piece of land when government is making available affordable housing schemes where I can go and buy a house that's already built? Because then government knows better where to build and where not to build. So you take away all that problem from the citizen who is looking for a place to lay his head.
Affordable
Why
housing,
are we not taking advantage of that?
Affordable housing are meant for people and should I call it public offices, some people who have well-to-do, who can afford, middle income people and that kind of thing. But maybe somebody, ordinary person, who has hustled to get something, make sure you want to put an habitat or something. Some of these people, you don't get them. And the cost of even building some of these affordable houses are not affordable. They're not even affordable. So the affordability is a problem. So clearly, some people, after working so hard, wanted to get a place for their family. And that's why you see some of these challenges that are coming up. So clearly, for me, what I want to say is that let us sit and assess every land that one wants to buy in future. First, you need to check for the chief, where is the information you have? Where is your plan that you have? From there, you move to the local assembly. They can tell you A, B, and C. And if you are convinced that you want to risk, then you can go ahead and do it.
Doc. Okay. Well, I'll let you come in, Doc.
I think that the
Please hold
problem
on.
is bigger than just the decision to buy land and where to sleep. You see, it's as if to say that problem exists. So just make sure that you get land away from that problem. But I want a conversation that deals with the problem. And not to say, okay, don't get land around these areas because there will be spillage and your house will be submerged. And I think the only point I agree with Titus Glover with his, line of argument is the attitude of our people too. I have always said that a people deserve the kind of government that they get. And sometimes we are so nonchalant and so lackadaisical in our approach or demand for what we deserve that you are just left wondering if we are not even getting better, from the kind of, government that we put in office. Just look at the news reports that you showed us. I mean, people just taking excuse my language, a piss, just taking a walk, like nothing is happening.
What would you have them do?
Please, let's leave and reflect the fact that this is not right and has to change. Don't tolerate it. Don't just say that, oh, well, I'll leave at the top and even circle gets
So what should they
flooded.
do? They should
No.
demonstrate?
They should demonstrate. They should get to the assemblies. They should get together. Write petitions. Demand.
But what shows
some
that they
action.
haven't done that already?
Even if they have, that's why I say, a people get the kind of government they deserve. You see, Rome, they tell you, was not built in a day, but they don't tell you the things that went into building Rome. People never stop demanding what is right in the developed countries. They never get tired. It takes generations. They hand it over to the next generations. They just don't say, we are tired. Oh, that's how they are. They never respond to us. They make sure they demand what is right until their governments begin to be responsive to their needs. And so that is the extent that I agree that, look, we need some citizen action, citizen mobilization to demand for what is right. I bought the land. I didn't know. Whose responsibility was it to have ensured that it was easy for me to find the right information? Whose responsibility? Who is taking the salary every month to ensure that when I want to buy land, information is made available to guide me to buy the land? It will take citizen mobilization to ensure that if I have become a victim, my son doesn't become a victim again. But if you accept it as that, your son, your grandchildren will even suffer worse than you are suffering. So that extent we need in addressing this problem. Then we need proper planning. Yes, like I indicated, it will cost money, but it will fix the problem and it will even make the money less if you plan better. Because it's already costing money. The fact that we have to spill the dam every year because we are afraid that if we don't, it will compromise the integrity of the dam is cost to the company. The fact that you let that water go to waste, only for you to have to spend more money to treat poor quality water in about 4 or 5 months down the line, when the water, quality and quantity has gone down, it's cost to you already over time. If you calculate the cost, you will realize that it will be better and cheaper to put in place a proper plan to deal with the excess water, which will, in the long run, be useful to you again when you are suffering shortage of water. So we need that kind of approach, that kind of central planning to deal with some of these problems. To some extent, I'll say with the Oblogo area, we have a plan in place. It can be the one that I spoke of in relation to what SADA put together, or it can even be the one that the president commissioned, expecting the Chinese to construct in about 50 months, even though we are almost there.
And the Chinese themselves have spoken that there's no funding.
And there's no funding for it. So it is not me saying it was done for political purpose. It was. I mean, the fact is that an election was coming. The North needed to be, galvanized and, mobilized. And it was said to be the biggest, investment in a project in the northern region that any government has ever embarked on. And that was it. That was to be the message. And so the message was used for the election campaign when no proper planning had taken place to ensure that after the shortcutting, the project really was going to get executed. And that is why we are where we are, where we no longer even make provision for it in our budget. But at least I am happy that there is a plan to address that problem. What you need is some, political will that will ensure that the necessary funds are raised and committed to it, and supervision, done for the construction of that dam to deal
you talk about,
with the spillage.
You talk about people mobilization and demanding for their rights. Don't you think that Ghanaians have developed that attitude of nonchalance because for a very long time they've been demanding, asking various governments to fix problems? I can talk about fix the country. They throw it back at you and say, fix your attitude. Lawsuits say, change the legal system so that we can all get access to legal education. You say no, you spill hot water on them. I mean, NAPCO personnel go on demonstrations. They have complained and complained. Nothing is being done about it. How far can you go as a human being if you're constantly demanding for it and nothing is being done? Eventually, you throw your hands up in the air.
Go as far as the Israelis will go. Go as far as the Palestinians will go. Go as far as the civil rights movements in America went. Go as far as, the change makers in the world never had change given to them on a silver platter. I mean, people didn't just wake up from a good dream and decided that blacks and whites could now ride together in a bus. It took years of demonstration, years of mobilization, and that is what we require. I sometimes get disappointed when we accept it as our faith and say this is how it's always been when you even act.
But the leader should know better as well. Why is the leader also not ensuring that I made a promise I'll do A, B, C, and D? I come into power and all of a sudden I've forgotten.
He hasn't forgotten. He's become comfortable because you have allowed him to become comfortable as citizens.
Okay.
If we don't make, if we make, and we said we make our leaders comfortable. In fact, I have this running battle with my, you know, even to hold our bags is a challenge. They want to hold it for you.
Yeah.
And I tell them all the time, you take my bag, you make me comfortable, and then I get lazy. And you see the Prime Minister, you know, of UK holding his bag, and you say, hey, you see, they are, but you, even holding my bag, you fight me to hold my bag. Don't let your leaders get comfortable. That, for me, it's where we will make the difference. When as citizens, we realize that just as we love our political parties, when we vote them into power, we have to hold them responsible to provide the things that they use to convince us to support them to get into power.
Okay, well, we'll take a break at this point. Doc, I'll let you speak, and Titus Glover is here as well. We have Alaji Alasantuyini. Keep watching. This is a big issue on TV3 New Day, and keep your messages coming in. We'll take a look at them at the end of the show, but keep watching. We'll be back. Welcome back. This is still the big issue on TV3 New Day. In the studios, I have Honorable Alasantuyini. He's the MP for Tamale North constituency. Also, Dr. Ronald Abrahams is the Director for Water Resources Commission in the Eastern region. And we also have Nikwate Titus Glover. He is a former MP for Tema East. We're talking about the water crisis that we're facing in the country. This time we'll dovetail into some more conversation, the directive that the president has given as well, or actually a meeting that he's meant to have later today. But Titus Glover, you wanted to come in on the conversation we're having about
I think the first thing that you asked, that what is going to be the solution in terms of the perennial downpour. And that is what I want us to focus on, because in few months, we'll come back to the same discussion on this very table, God willing. So what do we need to do? So the conversation, for me, should look at the solution to this problem that we find in our hands.
Yeah.
And that's why you suggested, what can we do? Is it possible that the estuary can be expanded? Which is yes. Number two, the possibility that the channel in which these excess water goes through into the estuary, can it be desilted so that we expand it also again? Can we look at the attitudes of our people? You know, all these things, the planning and the role of our local assemblies are very essential. What are they also doing? But for now, these are houses that have been built already. Unfortunately, when you look at this picture or this video on your screens, it is because of the spillage. It is because of the spillage that has gone overboard into people's place. But normal, you know, flooding wouldn't get to this situation. So clearly we need to have some conversation as to what we can do to save the situation in the coming years. What exactly can we do to address some of these problems that our people are facing? And I added the point that on the main Weija to the barrier, anytime it rains heavily, vehicles cannot go and come. In the scheme of things, the design, we need to look at it again. So that at least when it happens and there's an emergency, you cannot go. I fell into it. People have been talking about it. And when I was doing my national organizer campaign, I went to Botianongisha Manfu, and it rained. And I got stuck in the traffic for hours. So clearly, it is a national security challenge that we need to look at it and deal with the problem.
Doc, what would be your immediate solution?
I think we should look at continuity of our projects and plans. You know, we suffered a lot of disappointment when the elections went the way of MPP, because between the years 2012 and then 2016, we used to have a committee, and I was directed to represent the commission. We planned to deal with the hill slopes, what gets onto the roads, and then the Weija area. We had a Brigadier General Zanziri. Yes. We did some Republican survey.
I think he was not more.
He has died.
Passed,
He has died, yes. So we did everything, and we were meeting very regularly, and we're looking at these problems. We even got assistance from the Chamber of Mines, who wanted to really support the process to deal with the issues. buildings are there. And they got there because the lands were in the hands of stools and skins and families, and they have. So our plan was simply going to stop the developments and re-engineer the place. We need to really construct storm drains, huge storm drains that will take the water off the road, which will not allow anything to flow onto the road. And suddenly, when the elections came, the Committee for Lands and Natural Resources didn't work again. And I think this should be an opportunity to really advise that when committees of the sort are working, we shouldn't really allow them. Yeah, we shouldn't dissolve them. We shouldn't allow them to go. We should look at the ones that are solving national problems, which should continue in spite of which party has won. We needed to continue. Yeah. But I went to the National Security Council just to continue the process. I had all the energy in me, and the committee wasn't there. All the people I was working with were gone. And they told me, now you can't even deal with the National Security Coordinator because we now have a minister. So you address your issues to the minister. And sometimes you can be in the minister's office for 3 hours and you won't get him. Because you booked appointment, all right, you get there, you have to wait because there were other exigencies that the minister had to deal with. So they'll tell you, oh, the minister said you should hold on 3 hours, and sometimes the meeting will not come on and you get frustrated. So we have to look at some of these things, that we should not dissolve a committee that was working on lands and natural resources and was actually looking at some of these problems, which is why we still have it today and nothing has happened. We got the funding.
We actually got the funding?
We got the funding.
So where's the money at the moment? It's sitting in an account?
And it was an entity that promised the funding to help.
Okay, so it hasn't come in yet?
Yeah, and yet the moment the committee was dissolved, that ended the thing. So when the regimes change, we have to look at some critical issues and say, this should stay, this shouldn't go, this should continue. You see, we have to look at that thing. For me, the Weija problem we have there, even though human beings have, it's an engineering problem. And we should learn our lessons that when you buy land and then you get into some of these things, rethink. I bought 4 plots in the Weija area only to realize that I have bought the acquisition. I quickly went back to the chiefs. They changed the land for me. I got a fight. They changed it again. I got a fight. Then I left. So I learned the lesson that let me consult with the Lands Commission.
Did you get your money back, first of all?
I didn't get it. I lost the money. So I decided to now consult with the Lands Commission, and they gave me advice, and I'm in my own place now. So we have to learn our lessons. I've seen a stream which continually feeds the Weija downstream, what we call the Densu Delta Ramsar site. It's actually a delta, so it's like streams that actually enter the sea. It's not an estuary. An estuary is a large mass of water entering the sea. But this one is a delta, so we have the fingers, and the channels will have to be dredged all the time because of encroachment and pollution and all of that. So we have to re-engineer the Weija Dam. We are currently in discussion with the Dutch embassy and then some World Bank officials. Even yesterday, we were talking about some of these things, that what projects can we roll out to deal with the issues. The dam, as we see it, is silted, and we'll have to dredge. The dredge material is a whole resource that we can actually trade out and then get some money. Beyond the dam, we can create other dams. The Weija water is in excess of 60%. 30% was meant to produce water and supply, and then the 60% was for irrigation farming, which has all collapsed. Now you can get to only Tuba and you see some pockets of farms over there. All the farms have collapsed. So we have an opportunity, 60% more. Sometimes when droughts happen, we say, why won't we just... And in some, for example, recently there was some drought and the water channels or river channels were all dry, so that some water can be pumped, what we call intra-basin water transfer. So these are some of the things, and it's an engineering problem. we can re-engineer the hill slopes, and the water which gets onto the road will be off. We have to raise the road. It will take a little bit of money, but why won't we continue speaking to our partners? We need partnership in some of these things because we can't find the financial model to really go about some of these things. So we have to re-engineer it. So the Water Resources Commission is in talks with the World Bank and the Dutch government, and we are talking about more than even 3 projects are currently being discussed. We call it pre-feasibility and the feasibility phases to change the situation so that at least we'll have some respite. And we need to actually continue some of these things. But my word of advice is that as the regimes change, which is going to happen, we should really technically look into some of the structures that we put in place to deal with some of these problems. We shouldn't allow them to get eroded because the regime has changed. We have to ensure that we continue certain processes, because if we did not change the situation as we got it from 2016, and then we allowed the Committee on Lands and Natural Resources to collapse because the regime has changed. Whatever we put in place, they tried doing something else, but it didn't work. So we have to ensure that all the time we critically look at which committees are there, which boards are there, which should not be touched. And then even if we want to vary it in a way that would not be disastrous to whatever we are doing.
Well, Mr. Stanley Wate had spoken to the Daily Graphic at one point, and he was talking about the challenges that the Ghana Water Company had faced with regards to even the Weija Dam and trying to avoid people or prevent people from building along the banks and, of course, on the waterway. And he said that one of the challenges is that we brought in national security to help check the situation. But anytime we moved in, we received injunctions from the people. The security officers were then forced to move away. And then he says another problem is that we tried to fence off the dam area, but unfortunately, anytime a fence was erected, some land guards came to demolish it. So we can't even control, because we know that the issue of land guards is illegal. There's a law against it. We can't even seem to control that.
There's a problem.
How are we going to make inroads?
There's a problem. When the land was acquired, in some places, the compensation was fully paid. In other areas, it wasn't complete, it was partial. And in some areas, nothing was done at all. So these are some of the issues that if you want to fence off a place, then you should have completed the compensation process. But as I said, the moment the regime changes,
this compensation discussion is a whole...
Is it not government land?
Well, the land was acquired compulsorily by government. And if you begin a compensation process, maybe in a Champion's era, and then it doesn't continue maybe in the era of Rawlings, President Rawlings, and then it didn't also continue maybe in Kufuor's time and on to President Atta Mills and the rest. You know, the situation remains as it is, and nobody will accept that I haven't been paid compensation fully, and then you want to fence off the place.
But so, it's an issue of sensitization. It's
at
for
the time
safety.
The war was going on, there were still issues like that. So there were confrontations here and there were agitations, and it didn't work out well. So we need to do thorough work. And we have a report on this to really discuss some of these things. And then we even value the land in some 20 years ago that it will be over 25.2 or so million Ghana. Now the trends have changed. So it's going to be a very difficult matter to go back to really put some value to it. So we need to really work. And now what is happening is anybody who wants to buy land and build, please do due diligence and ensure that you have actually consulted with, now the country planning has become land use and spatial planning. Consult with them, they are in the assemblies. Also check with Lands Commission and make sure that you don't. This is why we want to continue to sustain and intensify the awareness creation so that people will not encroach on waterways and buy lands in places where you cannot build and be comfortable in your home. So we have to look at some of these things.
But all these land compensation issues, is another example of poor planning, because we don't have appropriate records. I mean, people make all kinds of claims when it comes to land compensation, as to whether it was compensation was fully paid, partially paid, or not paid at all. I have had to sit in meetings to discuss some of these issues, and you can just tell that people are taking advantage of our poor record keeping to become land entrepreneurs, traditional, land entrepreneurs, demanding all sort of compensations that, if you really look at the records and do due diligence, they may not even be, it may not even be due them. But I mean, government in its nature, in its very broad and kind nature, sometimes have to endure and indulge people with some of these tendencies. But I am still of the view that if we plan appropriately, we will get most of our problems resolved. And I agree with the point that Dr. Abrams made about the continuity. In fact, it's even a constitutional imperative for governments to continue, projects that they inherit from previous administrations. But I sometimes believe that many ministers, new ministers, do not even get the time to read handing over notes that are handed over to them. Before taking over. Because they have to walk and chew gum at the same time. So they get into the office and there's a lot to deal with, and maybe they get overwhelmed and they never really make time to look at the handing over notes. Because sometimes some of the things that we see ministers battling with, they don't need to reinvent the wheel. If they just took a step back and consulted broadly and perhaps even went through the, handing over notes, they would have realized that a workable process may have already been in place. And sometimes it's made up of professionals, not necessarily political, figures. Like when he spoke of Mr. Sanziri, I know, for example, the considerations that the president at the time will get together with his national chief, national security chief, had to do to appoint such a person to NADMO. And so if you found him working with people like this, because every time there's a spillage, it's a NADMO crisis. So you can understand why there was that linkage with the Lands Commission to solve that problem. And I think that maybe we need to relook at how we truncate very good initiatives as a result of regime changes.
Definitely. Titus Glover, any final words before we wrap up?
What I can say is that as we speak now, the president is heading to Kumasi this morning. And I've been a soldier against Galamsey. You look at the impacts. Last week we were here and you saw a cocoa farmer saying that he has given out his lands for Galamsey. And if we are not careful, our cocoa is under threat. Our water bodies are being destroyed. Our lands are being destroyed. The impunity and the greed and selfishness at which people are chasing money is what is killing this country. But I want to assure everybody, all your viewers, that the president is committed. And I have suggested that there should be a hold-up of this community money in Galamsey. And when they do that, land reclamation must continue. The Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources must give trees out for them to plant them. And when they plant, they must send the soldiers. The Ghana Armed Forces must be charged with that responsibility. They must be charged with that responsibility. When we're able to do this, we'll bring back the lives of these rivers. I'm sure we'll be able to make some inroads in this.
Well, the president is expected to meet the National House of Chiefs and the MMDCs today.
He should not give up.
At Mencha.
He should push
at 10
hard
a.m.
and endure.
I'm sure we'll update you on this situation.
On this Galamsey.
Do you mind to share?
Let me share
Just five. Just five.
Harriet, would you give me 30 seconds?
I say, first of all, the minister must deal with Wuntumi and his companies and others. That's how he can be rest assured that we will all support the political rhetoric that so he must deal with Wuntumi. 1. 2, like all destructive substances and machines, he should lead a policy position on the importation, deployment, and use of excavators and chamfine machines in this country. Because like guns, they have also become a threat to our livelihood. So we must have a policy position on how we use them. 3, he must adequately resource and restructure the Minerals Commission. The Minerals Commission, especially its inspectorate division, to professionally recruit and train guards in every mining district, like we have with the forestry. They have the forestry guards. So you must have this Mineral Commission guards that will be in every mining district, providing security to the concessions that are discovered in the 4th one. He must convince his cabinet to institute a non-political house cleaning in all our security services, because we have a lot of crooks in uniform carrying guns there who are being used for this galamsey. The final one is that, like cocoa, government must begin to think of how to pre-finance gold purchases and restructure licensing to ensure purchases are made only from licensed small-scale miners who are doing legal mining.
All right.
My 5
Alasan Suini giving us
of
some
advice.
5 pieces of advice to government, and so I hope that the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Honorable Sam Abujinapo, is listening. Honorable Alasan Suini is the MP for Tamale North constituency. Daniel Nikwate Titus Glover is a former MP for Tema East, and also we've had Dr. Ronald Abrahams, the Director for Water Resources Commission in the Eastern region. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we'll be back with some more. This is...
He can't move away from his TV. I told you.